Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today I'm going to talk about, well, not so much the death of the comic book industry, but the fact that this industry is not only dying, but the worst is yet to come. We have not yet hit rock bottom. And I'm going to do that by looking at an economic situation within the comic book industry itself. An economic situation that I have covered in a number of other videos. And that is the hiring practices of Marvel and to some extent of DC as well. And I would add to that the other smaller companies are probably doing the exact same thing, trying to copy the big two. Now, as I said, I covered this in a number of other videos. In some of my older videos, I looked at the job postings for Marvel. I looked at the internship program for Marvel. I looked at the freelance program for Marvel. I looked at how Marvel uses the panels at Comic-Cons to try to drum up people who are going to work for Marvel in the future. So I've covered this a number of times, but in all of those cases, I had to take the statements that they gave in those venues and use some supposition to fill in the blanks and just take the logical conclusion for what is going to happen based upon what they had said. But here today, I have quotes from one of the Marvel podcasts that is going to show you straight from the horse's mouth exactly what is wrong with the comic industry and how it starts with their hiring practices. And I say that this is for Marvel and DC, even though this is from a Marvel podcast, because there was an interesting thing that happened in one of the Comic-Con panels last year. It was a Marvel panel, and all the people on this panel at the Comic-Con worked for Marvel, and they were talking about how you can get hired at Marvel to create comics. And they kept on using this interesting phrase when they said things. They said, if you want to get hired by Marvel or DC. They always stuck that in there. If you want to get hired by Marvel or DC. And these people, again, worked for Marvel exclusively, and yet they kept on making that statement. And I would say they kept on making that statement because DC does the exact same thing as Marvel does. They're just not as vocal about it. So, as I said, I'm going to give you this straight from the horse's mouth. I'm going to read you some quotes from 3 creators from Marvel. And I'm using the same podcast that I did in my last video, where these 3 creators talked about the fact that they were inspired by villains more than heroes. They like to read villains more than heroes. They like to write villains more than heroes. And my last video was quite specifically about that, about the fact that they are writing villains, they're not writing heroes. So you have these 3 creators. And, oh, by the way, I always take these podcasts and link them in the description if you want to go confirm all of these things that I am saying, if you want to confirm these quotes that I am using. Always, you will find the link in the description for any of these podcasts or articles that I use. So, I'm going to give you some quotes from these 3 creators. And some people in the comments have said it is painful to listen to these quotes. But I would urge you to listen to these quotes here today, all the way through, because it just shows the monumental hubris of these people. Because what this podcast is focusing on itself is pride. They are straight up talking about pride and how they think it's a good thing. And that leads to this monumental hubris, this unmitigated gall of these people, and how they are trying to use and abuse the medium of comic books, how they are trying to change it into something that it is not and has never been. So first off, the person who is interviewing these 3 creators mainly is Sana Amanat. And she is the second in command at Marvel Comics. She is the VP of Content and Character Development. So she controls the content for Marvel Comics. And I would say she controls a lot more of the economic side of things than C.B. Cebulski, who is the #1 and deals almost primarily, it seems, with the creative process, as it were. And Sana Amanat has stated in an interview that she did last year that quite specifically, she herself was hired by Marvel. She was brought into Marvel to change how Marvel produced comic books and to change their old system that depended on fanboys into something different. That's why she was hired at Marvel to begin with. And the reason why I stated that the worst time for comics is still in the future, that we have not yet hit rock bottom, is because when Sana Amanat introduces these three creators, she says they are the next generation of Marvel comic writers. So these are the people who are going to be writing a lot of the Marvel comics in the near future. And so when you hear these people speak, when you hear their monumental hubris, you will see that the worst is still yet to come. So first off, we have Leah Williams, and she has written Gwenpool Strikes Back, Age of X-Men Extremists, What If Magic, and X-Men Black Emma Frost. And oh yeah, by the way, what I am showing you in the background, the art in the background, which I used some of it for my last video as well, is the art from the books that these three creators have worked on. So we have Leah Williams, and she makes a statement saying that I never knew that I could write comics. But then shortly after that, she makes this statement. She says, I got an email from a Marvel editor, Chris Robinson, saying that he had read my YA book and was just wondering if I had any interest in writing comics. Now, in one of my other videos, I asked the question, how in the world did this woman actually get to work for Marvel? Because she had stated that she had never written comic books before. She had only written fan fiction. And the people at Marvel are strictly prohibited from reading fan fiction because it would put the company in a legal bind. So they can't actually read fan fiction. And that's what she wrote, because she had never written a comic book before. But she had apparently written a YA book. And what happens is this Marvel editor, Chris Robinson, just simply sent her an email saying, hey, do you have any interest in writing comic books? And as I just quoted, she had said to herself before that, she never thought that she could write comic books. And yet she got this email offering her a job. Now, this is not surprising to me. It may be surprising to some of you, but Sana Amanat has said in a number of other panels that what you need to do if you wish to work for Marvel, you need to put your stuff out there, especially out there on the internet. And if you do that, we will come and find you. This is her specific statement. She said, we will come and find you if you put your stuff out there. And I never had an example of this before, but here we have the clear example of this right now. You have Leah Williams stating that someone came and found her. Now this right here is not a merit-based system, not in any way. As I stated in one of my other videos, what this is a way for Marvel to get around the legal troubles of administering a political ideology test to people. Because, again, in one of last year's Comic-Cons where you had a panel and they were talking about getting hired at Marvel, one of the creators actually said, when you post your stuff on the internet and put your presence out there for Marvel to see before they come and find you, when you put it out there, don't say anything bad about Marvel. Don't say anything bad on social media about us. That was the statement that this creator, I think it was Margaret Stoll, had made about working for Marvel. And she said it in a way and then laughed it off. But I find when these kinds of people say these statements and laugh them off, this is when they're being the most honest. They have this nervous laughter afterwards to say, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But that's what she said. Don't say anything bad about Marvel on the internet or your social media. So what happens before these Marvel people come and find you is that they look at your stuff on the internet. They have stated this specifically. You should have a presence on the internet so that we can look you up before we come and find you. And why would they need that? Well, they need that in order to administer this political ideological test to you and then go offer you a job. That way they don't have to put out these job postings where they have to actually be unbiased, where they have to have a system of merit, and where they can't discriminate against you. But if they come and offer you a job, they can administer this ideological test to your presence on the internet first. And that's how they get around that little legal problem, in my estimation. But that's just a little aside on my part. Let's continue on with these quotes. The second quote is from Teenie Howard. Now, Teenie Howard has written Thanos, Age of Conan Belit, Death's Head, which just came out, and a new comic that is going to come out soon called Strike Force. So Sana Amanat asks her how she got into comics to begin with. And this is Teenie Howard's answer. She says, I started turning in, finding anthologies, and submitting ideas and getting rejected. So my first book was published by Top Cow. They had a contest called Talent Hunt, and you got to send in a script. They said that they would pick and publish 4 of them. And they said that one of the writers in the writers category this year was going to be a woman. And that was really important to me because it made me feel like not only do I have a place here, but someone is making a spot. So yeah, for me, it was literally someone, and in a lot of our cases, it's a case of someone holding the door open. Someone holds the door for representation, for someone that has a perspective in a story in an underserved group. And yeah, I think that's really part of a lot of our stories, is that someone held the door open. And then Sana Amanat replies and says this: I like that you end it on the idea that someone has to hold the door open for you. And we have a lot of conversations about the fact that we are creating these niche spaces for people of a particular quote-unquote category. And like, I want to be able to kind of pull away from that sort of negative idea because we have to. Like, we have to be able to create those spaces because at the end of the day, that's how we are going to get these distinct stories with distinct points of view. So I know that's a lot, but try and take in exactly what both of these women are stating here. At the very least, Teenie Howard was stating that she was trying to put her stuff out there and she was trying to get published within the comic industry, unlike Leah Williams, who had no idea that this was what she was going to do. But Teenie Howard was trying to get published. But the thing is that, how did she get published? How did she break into the comic industry? Well, it simply was not on merit. It was on affirmative action, basically, because Top Cow was publishing the top 4 stories of the people who had submitted to this anthology. And yet, it really wasn't the top 4. It was the top 3 plus a woman. And that's how she got in. Because if they had just done the top 4, she wouldn't have gotten in. But she got in because of her female parts, not because of her merit. And she actually admits that right here. She was submitting these things and she was getting rejected. But she got in on this one, and she thinks that the reason why she got in on this one is very important, not just for her, but for a lot of them. She says that twice. For a lot of people like her, someone held the door open. Someone allowed them to come in, held the door open for them so that they could come in, even though they didn't deserve to be there, because she isn't there on merit. And Sana Amanat, the person who is the second in command at Marvel Comics, the person who directs the content of Marvel Comics, is saying, yes, this is exactly what we need to do. We need someone to hold the door open for people with, as she says, distinct points of view. And she had said last year that this is distinct voices that Marvel is looking for. So it is dependent upon your race. It is dependent upon your gender. It is dependent upon your sexuality. And I would add to that, it is dependent upon your political ideology. How and why and if you get into work for Marvel Comics. And this is exactly what the entire podcast is based around. You are a woman of X gender, of Y race, and Z sexuality. And you put that into your story. That is the basis of this entire podcast. So that is distinctly what they're talking about. This is how these people got in to work for Marvel. It wasn't because of merit. It was because of their female bits, or the way that they look at sexual interaction, or their race. Someone held the door open for this underserved group, as she states, and that's what needs to be done, according to Sana Amanat, the second in command at Marvel Comics. Now, I think I saved the best for last. The last of these creators is Vita Ayala, and she has written for Marvel Age of X-Men, Prisoner X, and Acts of Evil, Ghost Spider. And Sana Amanat asks her this question. So Vita, do you have a similar story where you, getting into comics for the first time, did have someone who helped open that door for you? And Vita Ayala's reply to that statement is, yes, definitely. And then she goes on to tell a story about the fact that she lived in New York and she worked at a comic shop. and she worked with this guy at this comic shop. And by the way, this guy now works for Marvel as an editor. But at the time, he was just a guy who was selling comic books at a comic shop. And he read her stuff, and he prompted her to go and submit her stuff. Again, she had no intent of actually submitting any of her fanfic into anybody, but this guy prompted her to do so. And this is what he said to her when he prompted her. This is what she states he said to her. "I have read your stuff, and I think that you're really good, and I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna be real with you. I think you're good enough to get a book at this place. And what I also think is that people are going to try to tokenize you, and you should use that to your advantage." And this was Vita Ayala's reply to that statement. She says, "You know what, man? I've been doing that all of my life." So here we have a statement straight from one of these creators that this is what they're doing. They are using this tokenized status to make sure that they get their stuff published and to make sure that they get a job. It isn't the fact that you say to yourself, look, they're going to try to tokenize you, but you're better than that. Don't deal with any of that. Just do your best. Give them merit, and that will make sure that you get to stay there. No, he's saying what you need to do is to weaponize your minority status, because they're going to try to tokenize you. And she says, yeah, of course I'm going to do that. I've been doing that all of my life. You see the gall of these people? The fact that they are claiming that these systems are out there oppressing them all over the place. And yet we have this person. He is saying, look, this system is there so that you can exploit it and you can actually get hired. And she is saying, yes, I realize this system is out there that I can exploit so I can get hired. And I'm going to do that because I've been constantly doing that throughout my life. She specifically states, I've been doing that all of my life. And yet they claim that the system is against them. They claim all the time that the system of oppression is against them when they clearly state that they know that it's not against them, that it's for them, and they should use it because it's out there, and they should weaponize their minority status and be there because of their minority status and make sure they stay because of this minority status. And the really, really funny part is that all of these statements were from the first of the podcast. And then an hour later, when they get to the end of the podcast, what do these three creators state? What do they all agree on? They all state and agree on the fact that they deserve to be where they are. They deserve their positions at Marvel. But as we have just seen from these quotes, they know that they don't deserve to be there. They know that it's not a merit-based system. They know that the reason why they are there is because of their female bits and because of their mentality towards sexuality and race. That's the only reason they're there. They have used that specifically to get in there. That is why they are there. And so when they say to themselves, yes, we deserve to be here, they're not saying we deserve to be here because of merit. They're saying we deserve to be here because we are of these minority groups and we need these minority groups to put us into these positions. That's the only reason we deserve to be there. And that whole mentality is reflected by Sana Amanat. That mentality is the fact that, yes, someone held the door open for you so that you could get in because, of course, you were being oppressed and you would not have gotten in otherwise because of this system of oppression. So we held the door open for you so that you could get in. Because, of course, once you get in, you're going to prove that you deserve to be here. You're going to show the world and everybody who buys comics that, yes, you, with your minority status, you deserve to be here because of your merit. But of course, they don't. And we have evidence of this from Marvel. Just in the recent past, you've had two creators from Marvel. One of them was that woman who was writing the Vision series. I don't know her name off the top of my head. She was fired because she just couldn't produce the comic. It was taking her 5 times too long to produce a comic, and they just let her go. And the other one was Cena Grace. They let him go. And what did he state after that? Well, they should have given me more chances. And they already gave him 3 chances. He wrote the Iceman book for, I think it was at least 12 issues, and they had to cancel it because of horribly low sales. They gave him a second try on the same book with all the same creators, and they had to cancel it again because of the same reason, horrible sales. And so they gave him a third chance. They put it out as a one-shot to see if there was anything left there, and there simply wasn't. And so they let him go because simply he wasn't producing anything of merit. And what is his statement? Well, they shouldn't have let me go. They should have given me more chances. Why in the world would they give you more chances? Well, because his mindset is the fact that, yes, I am going to produce something of merit once I get in there, once I get my legs under me, once I have thrown off the systems of oppression that have kept me down. And that's the bizarre thing about it. This is the mindset, both of these people as they are getting hired to work for Marvel, and the people who are hiring them at Marvel, that yes, you are going to show everybody that you have merit once we hold the door open for you. And yet, they have evidence that this is simply not the case. And why would they? Why would they put all of that effort into merit in order to keep their jobs, when the simple matter of the fact is they realize that all of their life, all they have done is to weaponize that status in order to make sure that they get a leg up, in order to make sure that they get this special treatment. And as I said at the first of this video, Marvel has specifically stated that these people are the future of Marvel Comics. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. Alright, I'll see you later. Bye.